BAS as a title, because I could. All of my titles this year seem to have had like at least two of the same letter next to each other. I have no idea how that happened. It wasn't actually intentional. I totally should have taken credit for it and not told you that. Never mind. So the concept is Bothead as a service. If you're going to be ridiculous, there's going to be a pick up the bass joke in there, right? So we've all, I think everybody in here is on IRC at least some of the time, or was on IRC at least some of the time, right? So you're familiar with like bots being part of the scenery, and the fact that internal bots can be really useful, but then every bot in existence tends to be either some completely custom thing or some ancient kludge that we've been maintaining for 10 years. I mean, do not even ask about Perl. The infobot on irc.perl.org came through from Perl 4, because it's a fork of the Fluterbuck fork of the original infobot. It's really fun. Periodically, it corrupts its own data store, and we have to restore her from backup. I wish you could do that with my brain. But yeah, it's the thing of you end up with lots of them, and then you end up with either 27 special purpose bots, or one bot that does 27 things, and now every time you want to add a 28th thing or modify one of them, you end up restarting it. So you see more disconnecting connects and joins from the bot than you do actual useful functionality. Which is kind of one of the annoyances of bot running. Especially the thing of anytime you're upgrading anything, it tends to end up falling off and back on again. And then if something gets knocked off the network, half the time it doesn't reconnect. And this sort of thing, I kind of end up at the point of, what you end up doing is something like, screw it, we'll just use bot basic bot. And bot basic bot is great, but even though it's built on Poe, it's mostly synchronous and just has Poe doing async under the hood for the IRC part. So then you end up with, some sort of service has decided to lag, and now your bot's ignoring you for several seconds. Not that we've noticed that with a bot on Shadowcat IRC that connects to Google Calendar at all. There've been a number of occasions where I've been thinking it would be really nice to have a bot for this particular purpose, but then ended up not getting round to it because the amount of gumph involved in getting to a decent bot was more than the effort required to write the code that I actually wanted the bot to talk to. So in the end, I just went, screw it, just made it a script on a server somewhere that everybody could SSH to. And I'm kind of like, no, this is kind of sucky. And also the thing of, even if you dealt with all of that, you end up in a situation where you're trying to think about, okay, how do I authenticate who's who? Where do I reply to? So on and so forth. And it just gets annoyingly messy. And a friend of mine has been recently teaching themselves a bit of programming, and has got to the point where they have a bunch of sort of chatty Python console scripts where they can run the script and it will ask questions and give responses and so on. And that's a really great exercise for somebody who's starting to learn programming. But trying to go from there to, say, something where you could talk to it from your phone is a huge amount of effort. And then, of course, there's the whole thing of upgrading it, upgrading things. There's the disconnect and reconnect, and the fact that if one plugin crashes, it tends to take out the entire bot. Or you end up eval caging the whole thing together, at which point the one plugin dies, but it dies in some stupid state, so in order to get that plugin back working again, you have to restart the entire bot anyway. And just all of these things are so frustrating. And Me being me, my answer to I have a bunch of frustrations that are in a similar area is how do I turn this into a general problem and make it go away? Oh yeah, and plus testing. Oh God. Right, yes, okay, let's disconnect the bot, reconnect it, try a command, no, that didn't work, edit the file, disconnect it, reconnect it, try a command, oh, that didn't work, disconnect it, reconnect it. Shit, the IRC server has just gone, you're reconnecting too fast, and K-lined you. And then there's been various versions of one trick I've seen that was very neat. Perlbot, which handles all of the eval stuff and whatever for freenode hash Perl and Perl help and things. The solution there is Perlbot runs behind a ZNC. So ZNC maintains the connection to the IRCD and Perlbot just talks to that. And that's really quite cool, except for the fact that if I'm trying to get somebody to be casually interested in having a bot, going, oh, it's easy. All you have to do is learn Perl, IRC, and how to configure ZNC and run it as a daemon somewhere. This is not a convincing argument, right? So what I started thinking about was, we're all kind of Unixy people. We all think in terms of, where possible, small components that talk to each other. So what if, rather than trying to build an entire system out of the box that does everything, go for having a protocol that enables everything and is really simple to implement, and also reasonably robust across across changes in things. And so I started thinking about how would you lay something out. So the talk to an IRC server for me, or talk to a matrix server for me, or talk to Telegram for me. Those are all basically one class of problem. So what if, rather than doing any of the usual things, you had a system where you could write something that did one of those, and it just needs to speak some sort of simple protocol that provides, we're not going for complete IRC bot here. I'm not going for this would allow you to build an op bot necessarily. Just a chatter bot. And once you start thinking in those terms, then the lowest common denominator across all the different chat systems actually isn't that bad. So, going from that idea, and the thing there is then, if you do that sort of pluggability, there is an obvious thing to do. If you don't want to invent a protocol, make it lines of JSON. Because lines of JSON are actually typable out as a human for manual testing, and it's really easy to connect things together. And you can completely bypass the needing to do authentication part just by saying, screw it, it's going to run against a Unix socket. It'll be fine. Because now you can use Unix permissions to restrict it, and that's one less thing to screw up, right? The other thing that I've done to good effect with servers that work this way before is, if you want to be able to connect to it remotely, you provision an SSH user that can do nothing except run SOCAT on the other end. At which point, you create that user, set up the authorized keys file to only allow the SOCAT command, and now your thing on the other end, SSHs in, immediately gets its SOCAT onto the thing, and now you're talking stood in, stood out to the SSH process rather than to a single Unix socket, and you just don't have to think about most of it. The best part of this, although sadly I did run out of time and don't have a proof of concept of that part, is that I reckon I can write a very simple thing that talks to the Unix socket on the back end and presents itself to the world as a WebSocket URL. At which point, if you've got a program on another system and it can talk WebSockets, which like pretty much every language can now, again, your how do I protocol worries just disappeared. Also, I think it would be hilarious to be able to prototype bot behavior by being able to have your browser pretend to be a bot plugin temporarily. So when somebody activates the plugin, it comes up in the browser. You have a new request, please respond. So I will point out for the record that while I didn't say no because I thought it would be funny, I did actually submit 3 45-minute talks with the expectation that I was giving the organisers something to select from. Yeah. So 2 45-minute slots and 2 lightning talks later, this being the third one, I didn't manage to produce my usual 160 slides, and instead I am going to completely wing it. That's okay though, because we have an internet connection that works. And also we have putty. And also, if I can remember how to computer, I'm sorry, it's a GUI. I forget how to use them once I'm tired. Oh, go away. Restore previous tabs. There we go. Right, so close my online banking. I don't think I want to leave that open with you lot watching. However, yes, so that gives me the complete set of code. Now what we do is start screen. This will make sense in a minute. Oh yes, and of course I completely forgot to put a slide on with the name. Because there's been a large amount of it attempting to take over my front yard repeatedly. And my attempts to get a gardener in who would figure out how to deal with it properly went horribly wrong because unfortunately I got recommended a really good gardener and it's summer and so she's completely booked out because she's a really good gardener. Eventually my cleaners decided they'd had enough of this. Came a little bit early with secateurs and just cut half of it back. Resulted in me sending a text message to them saying, thank you very much for dealing with the triffids. But, so I thought hydrangea was quite a nice name for the bot, and also the thing of, you know, the branches get everywhere, the roots get everywhere. And that's where we're kind of going here. Also, it gave me a nice metaphor in that the central routing component is the trunk. The things that provide the trunk, the plugins, are branches. And the things that actually connect it to the real world are the roots. So, what I was saying about protocol. So if I start off, hang on a second. Before I start doing this, here we go. Yes, I did leave the warn statements in. Excellent. I will actually talk about the code in a minute, but first I want to show you what this is actually doing. So you start. Yeah. Oh yeah. Remember mine as I live, you prat. Yeah, that's okay. There we go. So because I figure we're going to want plugins to not break when you upgrade things, the first thing I started off with was protocol negotiation. So I need to tell it that. There we go. And it just said to me, I want to register with the connection. I'm an IRC route. Here's what I'm connected to. And the idea is once it goes into full mode, the first entry on the JSON is a from address, as in if you prepend this to a response, it should manage to route your message to the thing that sent you the message so you can reply to stuff. And then the rest of it is just arbitrary payload. So this will make sense in a minute. So now we're connected.
Chance you can drag the bottom of the window up?
Oh.
Just the bottom edge to the half of the screen so we can see the...
I'm trying to, and the operating system is fighting me.
It's maximized.
It's not maximized. That's the problem.
Make it a little smaller.
Yeah, I'll just drop the font size. Be fine. There.
There's resize the window. Pull the bottom edge of the window up.
Oh, yeah. Right. So... Right. It now knows that it's actually registered, so... And it's expecting to be connected to a route, so it's saying, I want to send to the message bus. There has been a message sent to me and hello, and the return address is the nickname of the person who sent it. Should have replied to that. What did I do wrong? 1 second. Right, no, that's into the... Yeah, no, that should have... What are you doing? Registration, connection register. I told it the registration was complete. What are you whinging about? Connection register, connection are done. Registration was what it told me it wanted. Sorry, this would work a lot better if the thing that I did like 20 minutes ago actually still worked. This is the joy of live demos, of course. Seriously, though. What is different here?
Maybe the same bus.
Well, no, but bus is the sending, because the route, because the trunk has bus stuff.
That's what you did there. There's bus in the first element.
Yes, but the bus in the first element is the message being sent to the route. The message that comes back isn't. Oh, hang on a second. Maybe it really wants it to be a message from the bus. Nope. Alright, it hates me. There was something else I wanted to mention, though, which is one thing I have got right. It notices it's been disconnected. Thinks about it for a bit. And should in a moment, there we go, brings itself back up. So at this point, I will show you the code, and hopefully in the process of showing you the code, I will figure out what I screwed up with the protocol. But this is actually kind of fun, because I decided to play with IO async and the Perl X async await that I showed you yesterday. Actually makes life really nice, because for like sequence things like the connect, notice, disconnection, wait. So it starts off by doing the protocol negotiation, then does the registration part, and at that point configures up the stream to be able to pull a callback, and then the IRC thing is literally just this. So it goes, figure out when I've been closed, do the login, wait for that as a future, wait for the future for close to be done, and then I ask the IO async loop to give me a delay future for 15 seconds, and then it goes back round to the start of the while loop and reconnects, which I think should be reasonably robust across most disconnections.
You probably want to try, but
Yeah. Probably want what?
Some sort of try-evaluate thing, just in case of death. But...
Yeah, I'm reasonably happy with the moment for it reconnects unless there's a bug in my code.
Yeah.
Adding eval into it would have required trying to debug async await and IO async interacting with this at the same time, and then I wouldn't have had anything running by now. As it was, I spent half an hour debugging an impossible problem where an error message seemed to have disappeared. I thought my lightning talk code was completely broken. No, I'd forgotten to do a final get call on the future, so it never threw the exception. Yeah, see, registration done should actually set it up to take the brev message. Ah, God damn it, I got the arguments the wrong way round.
Yay. When we have typed language.
If we had a type language, I'd only typo the types. What did I do to that? Look, I never said this was a good idea, right? Ha-ha! There we go. Yeah. So when I don't fail at protocol, that gives you that. And then the next bit is you need something to actually be a bot plugin. So for that, we have a branch which is called Scriptorium. And I can't remember minus ilib to save my life, can I? So I accept that. You notice this time I got a transaction ID. That's actually associated with a future. It's basically gensemming. The A0001 is using Perl's bizarre plus on strings behavior because I can. So I don't care about the from address. And I need to send it done. At which point, it will send me a list of commands. Now, the way it got that list of commands is it went across the script directory. So that, amazingly enough, is just cat dash. So if I ack that, it should now be happy to receive commands. So if I invent a different from address and say run that code worked before. See, this is why I don't do load demos. Everything breaks. I know what I did. Yes, well done. Right, we will try the. Yeah, don't mind that. There is a strange thing with module compile where it manages to produce code that doesn't make any sense, but only the first time you run it. Once it's written the PMC, it works perfectly. I could have debugged that, but just running the compilation once was fine. Right. And I get a transaction ID back. This is actually doing what it was supposed to this time. Excellent. So since it's an echo, amazingly enough, once I send this through, it's going to echo it straight back to me. And then if I shoot the cat in the head, don't try this at home, you get it done for the future because the command's completed, right? So again, this is just protocol stuff. And if I hop back across to that, this is again not... Right, yeah. So Scriptorium is even more async await because I could. So basically, does the protocol negotiation, and I'm actually doing like actor style in the sense of I'm just doing a loop around messages. I am fairly sure that we can produce Erlang style receive with pattern matching using this with not many lines of code, which I think would be amazingly cool. So if it gets TX, it pulls out the existing transaction and sends it down to there. Run will actually start a command, and start command just pulls up a command invocation and then stashes the future for it because we don't care whether the command ends successfully or not, we just care that it ends. And then the actual connection basically just sits there and does a read until EOF, sends the message, and then I just have a tiny callback that goes, okay, if you tell me that, I'll just send something to it. Right? This is not complicated. Again, the whole point, and the point of this is these two, I think, are a proof that for writing both root and branch implementations, it should not be that hard to produce a reasonably working implementation in any language. And so long as the other end is async, you can probably do it with a while read print loop, which was part of the plan because I don't want to make people do async to write plugins. I just want async for plugins to be better. So the trunk is the interesting bit. Oh yeah, the JSON stream was actually really easy. If it's got a message handler, reads by lines and then emits through the message. Read message does a read until and returns a future. There was no point using await at this low level. And write message and close, because write message returns a future, means that I can await write message and close in other code and be certain that the last message I sent is flushed before my object gets destroyed along with the file handle it was using. Because there's nothing quite so terrible as an async code queuing up a write and then destroying the thing that was going to do the write before the event loop hits it. And that solves that problem for me. And then the trunk basically starts off, oh, yada, 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 protocol. Yes, we've seen that 73 times now. And then uses the closed future as the final thing. And the setup basically just faffs around to set the appropriate details so that if you've registered a root that's root IRC, server name, messages get tagged with that on their way through. Basically, you prepend that to the from address, and therefore it can use that to route the information back to them. So this is the trick of having just an array ref at the front that's a from. You just stuff things onto the front of it as you pass it through the system so that the messages can wend their way back, and none of the components really need to think about it. And then everything gets shoved into the message bus. Which just tracks anytime it gets a message, is the user already in a conversation with a plugin, in which case, route the message through to the plugin. And if not, check to see if it's a valid command and start the conversation. And that command register just populated a hash ref. This is, not complicated. Handle branch message is incoming from the branch, which finds the relevant conversation and sends it in. Relay branch message is for when that's gone through the branch and is coming back out. Start conversation again is just set up an object. And then the conversation object is two event handlers, like literally. And that thing will actually work as a central message bus. I can see that this is where it's all going to go really horribly wrong. But I'm going to no. I'm going to try this anyway and see what happens. So hit test is gone. However, if I do SOCAT yeah, boom. Right! So we have a route connected to it. So the bot's there. Right, let's push my luck. Yeah, and of course it doesn't work. Yay, protocol mismatch. Okay, at this point, I am going to give up on trying to do that because that's just. I'm not debugging the most complicated piece of code in the system in front of you while you all try not to fall asleep. That would be ridiculous. So, not this way again. I think, however, other than the fact that I attempted to do a live demo and the live demo goblins happened, I have started to want bloody fun. Firefox has this lovely thing. You know, Firefox has this lovely thing where if there's another instance of Firefox running, it just opens a new window. So the thing is, the old window disappears significantly before it's actually got round to quitting. So if you're trying to switch between two versions of Firefox, what you need to do is to give it a little time to settle. Say by whining at your audience about Firefox making you look even stupider than you already did. And we are actually... Oh, shut up. I know it's ancient. It's only connected to the internet at the same time because it is. And I've only actually got this on here because that means you can see where the bloody GitHub repository is. At which point, I will be continuing to hack on this because I swear I am one bug away from that working, at which point I can write and launch a script that sets up all three. And the point of having it all as registrations is, as I could have demonstrated... Oh, hang on. I've just figured out an intelligent way of demonstrating this, right? Which is... There we go. So... Yeah. Right. By the power of copy and paste, this will go a little bit faster. If I can manage to copy and paste to save time. There we go. Ah! So now, having sent it a future ID back, which is me, that's getting routed through. Or I could get that wrong again. TX8001. Yeah. No, because that's a started conversation. TX8001 started worked. Where's the window where I did it that it actually did work? Oh, of course. No, that's the wrong one. That's the right one. Where's the rest of the crap? Yes, that's. Right, TX80. Oh God, FML. All right, I'm going to go back to it's on GitHub and it's totally going to work when I figure out what the fucking fornication that bug is. However, the point here is this is a protocol that, modulo me being an idiot, you can actually type to figure out what you're doing, and is actually readable. I like protocols I can read on the wire and not cry. And we should be able to write alternative branch implementations that do basically whatever, just by defining various protocol forms for the routes. The other obvious one is probably having a branch that can spontaneously send things so that you can have, say, cron tab output get thrown through to the bot and turn up in a query window. And the other one being, I'll be done in about 2 minutes. And the other one being something that can listen to all of the traffic on a particular channel so that you can basically create a log bot or something that can snapshot a chunk of context from a conversation or whatever. Which I already have a victim to write that one. Though he's playing with his phone, so he hasn't realised.
I'm already noticing this and going, yes, I can see how we can use this more.
Yeah. The other thing is, because the stuff inside the root is is as simple a data structure as possible, I am fairly sure that for doing upgrades, what I can do is basically convert all of my state to a data structure, fork, print the data structure to the new version, and have it reconstitute itself and just reopen all of the relevant file handles. At which point the parent commits suicide, and you've upgraded from one version of the IRC code to another without actually dropping your IRC connection. And if I can get that working, then I think 98% of the annoyances of doing this stuff will go away, and ZNC will no longer seem like a tempting option. So my apologies for this being a little bit random and full of fail. This is why normally the only way I do live demos is by videoing in advance and lying. But I hope this had some interesting ideas, and I would hope you poke around the GitHub repository and feel free to file issues complaining about things and asking questions, or come bug me on IRC or whatever. I would quite like to turn this into something that other people are interested in deploying. One of the reasons for using pure Perl async await is that I want to distribute the core stuff as a single Fatpack script, so you can literally get it, run an init command, and you actually have a running bot. Yeah, have a look, have a play, see what you think, and thank you for tolerating this demonstration of Murphy's Law in action. Cheers.